Hello, everybody. I hope that you're doing well. You should be viewing this particular recording on Thursday during the lab time. At this point, I am in prep for my surgery, so I won't see you guys for at least a week when I'll return online. So the first video, which we're going to work on today, is our kinematic model for wound infection. First things first, say hello to my buddy. Criminally, I don't have a name for him yet, but he is a lot of fun. A friend of mine sewed this all together, and I just love it. I think she technically knit it, in case there's somebody who knows the difference between those things. Yeah, he's a lot of fun. So these are one of my favorite animals. So that's not what we're about today. Today we're about wounds. So let me be clear. Your job is to develop criteria for when antibiotics should be given to a patient. Now, if you are one of our CNAs, you will know that this is a little bit of a preposterous assignment, right? We're not actually doing kinematic analysis for people who come into the ER, but that's not going to stop us from having a good time. So last week, you all measured, the speeds of bacteria, neutrophils, and wound healing. And you're going to take that information and use it as part of your kinematic model. Now, in our amoeba lab, and even in our measurement of these speeds last week, we found that acceleration played basically no role. Yes, things change directions. Yes, that is technically accelerations. But what we noticed is that rarely were things speeding up or slowing down at any appreciable amount. What's really fascinating about E. coli is when they move, they've got one flagella that is minimum, but generally they're using up to 3 flagella in a coordinated fashion to make themselves move. And they twist kind of like dough hooks and help the E. coli move through the fluid. Now, if you didn't hear my description of this before, imagine you yourself were trying to swim through a ball pit, right? Or the foam pit at Sky Zone or something like that. You would find that really hard to do because as soon as you stop pushing, you stop swimming, you stop. And the same thing is true for our little bacteria. But we're going to assume that they are fully loaded, equipped, ready to go, and that any motion they need to do is with this flagella. So what do I mean when I say you're going to come up with a kinematic guidance for when antibiotics are going to be given? Well, basically, your job is to look at 2 different types of injuries. The wounds that we're going to look at are basically the cut or the scrape and the puncture. So I'll be honest, this assignment doesn't often go the way I want it to go. But this is going to be the year that people do well on it. And you're the class that's going to do well on it. And why is that? Because you're all having so much fun with this already. We're going to have a good time. Okay, so we're going to look at this kinematic model here. And this is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so we have a puncture. And it looks like my face is moving out of camera, and I'm sorry about that. You're just going to get a lot of 5 head in the camera shot because I'm looking down at my tablet as I'm writing. Oh, well. So we're going to look at a puncture, right? And so when we think about a puncture, imagine you've got an arm here, right? That's my fancy drawing of the arm. And you've got some kind of, puncture that is now, opening up your body and allowing bacteria to get in. So I try to not give people a lot of pictures for this because I really want you to develop your own. But we're going to try it this way anyways. So basically, there you were hanging out doing whatever, and you stepped on a nail or something stabbed you in your arm, whatever. You now have a puncture. And you basically have to decide the following. Where does your E. coli start, right? Or your bacteria start? Where do your neutrophils start? Okay. What role does wound healing play in this? Okay. So what I'm getting at is you're going to draw a really nice picture, a little better than what I've done. You're going to put on a coordinate system. You're going to label things. And you're going to start your different agents at different locations. And you're going to find out how important those choices are to whether you get infected. Now, what do I mean you get infected? Well, if you have E. coli sitting in a media-rich environment, a food-rich environment, they can reproduce about once every 30 minutes. Okay? If it's really pushing it, maybe 20 minutes, but let's just all use the same number, about once every 30 minutes. And so those E. coli, as soon as they get into that media-rich or food-rich environment, they're going to put down roots and they're going to start multiplying. And so what is that helps us in reality, from these kinds of injuries are our neutrophils. And our neutrophils are these macrophages that come along, they find the E. coli, and they eat them. They surround them and they eat them. Once that's happened, you can assume that the infection is being taken care of. But the question is, how long does it take the neutrophils to arrive at that location? And this is what I mean by a kinematic model of wound infection, right? If the E. coli get deposited right in front of the neutrophils, game over, neutrophils win, you're fine. But that's not really what a puncture's like, right? A puncture is some kind of deep wound, into your body that you need time for the neutrophils to reach. So you're going to have to make a bunch of assumptions, and you're going to want to justify those assumptions. And I strongly encourage you to play with a range of assumptions, such as maybe your E. coli start at the top of the puncture, and then they swim down to the bottom, and that's where they start reproducing. Maybe your E. coli get deposited at the bottom of that. So then you could say, okay, my patient had a puncture. It was a clean piece of metal, or it was a dirty piece of metal, right? What are we saying there? It had bacteria on it, or it didn't have bacteria on it. Maybe that's a terrible criteria. That's your group's determination to make. Remember, you've got your group of 4 people. You're all going to be working together on this. And I don't want anyone sitting passively. This is really meant to be a group project. Everybody is part of it. Now, there can be a lot of frustration when you're doing something like this because you're wondering, what's the right number? What's the right criteria? And the answer is there isn't. You have to make it up, and you have to justify it. And that's why you have several people in your group to argue and debate this. Now, what I think is the best outcome is you guess some numbers, how deep the puncture is, where the neutrophils start, where the E. coli start, and then you test to see, what time scale you're looking at. And then you find that none of those numbers work. So then you go back and you start over. There's a lot of starting and stopping in this project. The goal isn't to come up with a medically prescriptive scheme per se. It's to figure out how you would come up with that scheme. So it doesn't matter if you're perfect. It matters that you've thought about things and you've made a guess at something that you have no business of making a guess at. That's what it's all about here. Okay, so the puncture, you've got to ask yourself, where are the E. coli entering the problem? Where are the neutrophils coming from? Is there a chance that as the E. coli is swimming down to the bottom of the puncture, that the wound closes up? And this is a very straightforward kinematic kind of problem once you've decided where everything starts. The other type of wound that you're going to experience is a scrape. And that is, I've got my wound, or I've got my skin here, right? And now I've come across and I've scraped some portion of the skin off, right? And now the question is, how bad of a scrape or how large of a scrape do I need to have before I need antibiotics? And now this is a pretty different question. Maybe your E. coli are starting here and they're swimming in and they start growing in this media-rich environment. Maybe as the skin was taken off, E. coli were deposited. But you can see that the physical situation for this and this are different. So that's what we're after. We're looking at these 2 different regimes. There's not necessarily a lot of kinematics in this problem. There's more likely you're going to be asking how many neutrophils are available. So you're going to have to look up a lot of stuff. Where are neutrophils found in your body? How do they get delivered to a wound? What do we know? So this is, again, the whole point of this project is for you to make realistic assumptions, you to make guesses, and you to give it a shot. Now, once you've done this, once you feel good about this, you're going to prepare some slides. And you're going to give a talk. I'm hoping to be able to be back for these talks, but I can't promise anything. And I can't promise I can't tell you exactly how long this project's going to take to do. Because every time I've done it, it takes a different amount of time, largely based on how interested people are in it. So for right now, we're going to say we're going to spend Thursday of this week, which is what? Today's the 14th for me, 15, 16. We're going to spend Thursday the 16th, and I'm going to send out a rough guide via email on how you should be spending your class time. But Thursday of this week, we're going to be doing the kinematic model. Okay. Then Friday, we're going to be doing the 3D printing project. And I'll talk about that in another video. Monday next week, Wednesday next week, Thursday next week, and then Friday next week. It is possible that I will be on a Zoom or Teams call with you a week from this Friday. That's my hope, that I'll be on a Zoom Teams call with you. I think I'm going to go pretty stir crazy here at home, so I'm going to do what I can to, get back there. I should only be on kind of the heavy-duty painkillers for a couple days, so hopefully I'm feeling up to it. But so right now the plan is we're going to do the kinematic model on Thursday. That's today, the video you're watching right now. The day after, we're going to spend that entire 75 minutes, all of you together, deciding exactly what you want to do for the 3D printing project. And this is going to be really tough, but I'm going to talk about that in sort of another video. Then what's going to happen is one of these days next week, you're going to spend on the kinematic model. And I'm going to leave that for you as a class to decide what you want to do. If you're loving the 3D printing project on Friday, then we're going to work on the 3D printing project on Monday. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. I'm going to leave you some freedom. I'm going to be covering the various reading questions. I'm going to be uploading those to YouTube, which you can watch alongside this. All right, so let's come back to the kinematic model. If you look here at the second page of the kinematic model handout, I ask a lot of questions, right? Such as, where does the bacteria enter the wound, right? What does the puncture look like? Now, if you're one of the physicists in the classroom, you may not have ever thought about these things. That's okay. Turn to your biology friends and say, what's going on here? How do we help? Okay? However, there's going to be some kinematic equations that need to be done, right? So we have equations like, y equals y naught plus v naught t plus 1/2 at squared. I heard you, Ava. And you're going to use these to develop your model and determine when infections are going to happen. A good kinematic model is going to have graphs. You're going to be showing us a range. You'll hopefully be saying that if the puncture is this deep to, some other depth, you don't need antibiotics. If the puncture is beyond a depth, you probably need antibiotics. If the scrape is of this surface area, you're probably okay. If it's in a wider surface area, you probably need to worry about something else, right? So that's really what we're after here, is to come up with that picture with that model, okay? So I give you a lot of detail on this page, and I hope that you're able to use that. For now, I'm going to stop this recording, and you guys can communicate through me or with me on Teams and ask me whatever questions you've got. And as soon as I can, I will reply to that. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do on Teams, though, is that you make a group chat with everybody in your group and, put me on it. And that way I can be talking to everybody at once and we're losing kind of less information as we go. Okay. Thank you again. I am so remarkably grateful for all of you. I am really thankful that you are continuing this class without my presence, and I thank you so much for your dedication. I'll let you know how I'm doing in the surgery as soon as I can. Okay, goodbye for now.